Welcome back to the Open Web Forum at CogX, curated by Fabric Ventures. Hopefully you managed to check us out on Twitter at fabric_VC to catch our latest announcements. But now the next panel will be discussing scaling Web3. Moderating is the extremely erudite Anish Mohammad, a multidisciplinarian with over 20 years experience in security and cryptography as a researcher and a consultant. He is the co-founder of the UK Digital Currency Association and co-founder CTO of Panther Protocol, where he is building scalable, interoperable privacy for DeFi. Over to you, Anish. Welcome back to the Open Web Forum.
Hey, thank you very much for the intro, and I'm hoping that I'll be joining the rest of the panelists soon. Okay.
Here we are, no worries.
Oh, thank you. So today we have with us three very awesome people. So we have Henri from Streamr, Illia from Near, and Przemek from RAM Network. So I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves. And today's structure of this conversation will be very, very loose. As long as they don't try punch each other, I'm not going to intervene. And given it's virtual, it is impossible to punch each other. So Henri, you go first.
Sure. All right. Thanks, Anish. So hi, I'm Henri. I'm co-founder and CEO of the Streamr project. I have a tech background and I'm based in Zug, Switzerland. And maybe briefly about the project, what Streamr is. It's a decentralized messaging protocol used for sharing data and broadcasting data at scale. So it's not a blockchain, right? It's not layer 1 or layer 2. It's a layer 0 protocol, providing a data transport service for the higher level applications that might come on top. It implements the publish subscribe or pub/sub messaging pattern, meaning that basically data sources publish messages to topics, and the message gets distributed by the network to everyone listening on that topic, up to say, hundreds of thousands or even millions of subscribers with relatively low latency. So it's kind of like a basic messaging primitive, and as a result, the higher level applications that might use it can be very diverse, right? They can range from apps that include some kind of, say, chat or presence functionality to layer 1 blockchains or layer 2 systems to crowdsourcing data sets or, powering IoT data flows in a smart city. Technical people in the space usually understand it if I compare it to IPFS. So if the apps commonly use IPFS to store and retrieve static files, right? Then similarly, they might use Streamr protocol to publish and subscribe to real-time data streams instead of static files. And maybe that gives you at least a bit of a glimpse of what it is.
Thank you very much, Henri. That was very helpful. Illia, would you like to go next?
For sure, yeah. So hi, everyone. Great to be here again. And so I'm co-founder of Near Protocol. Near Protocol, kind of on the high level, we are focused on giving control to people of their assets, of their data, and of the power of governance, right? And to do that, kind of our primary focus has been on building a scalable and usable infrastructure, which is layer 1 blockchain, smart contract, kind of all the APIs, all the developer tooling, and pretty much allowing people to start building applications that are kind of following this new paradigm, allow like their users to have kind of ultimate control over how these applications are running. And kind of relevant to this conversation will be definitely the topics of usability, like how do we scale beyond this, as well as kind of the actual infrastructure scalability. As we scale the usage, we actually need to make sure that the infrastructure behind it is scaled as well.
Thank you again, Illia. So now, oh God, I'm going to struggle with your name. How did you pronounce your name? Okay.
It's Przemek.
Przemek. So Przemek, welcome, and please introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, thanks, Anish. So my name is Przemek. I co-founded and I'm leading product and tech at Ramp. At Ramp, we are enabling others to add fiat payment flows to their crypto Web3 products. So this is called Fiat on-ramp. And our mission is to enable access for everyone to the decentralized networks. And I think in the context of this conversation, it's actually a very important topic because we can build amazing tech, but if no one has access to it, then it's useless.
So thank you very much again, Przemek. So, based on our earlier conversation, we shall try to keep this at a high level. We will dip into tech as and when needed, but as a whole, we'll try to keep the conversation as tech agnostic as possible. So as we all discovered, scaling Web3 involves two pieces. As Henri pointed out earlier, for the technology to support it, scaling has to happen in a technology space. And for people and humans and devices to come in, you need to have adoption. Przemek, you have been the person of the three in the panel who has been most exposed to this on-ramping people kind of thing. What are the key challenges that you're seeing, and what are the directions that you're seeing that you think this ecosystem is going to take?
Yeah, on-ramping is, I think, much harder than anyone else thinks, and it's definitely harder than I thought when we started Ramp. And there are many different challenges on different levels. So you have the regulation layer, where the different governments are trying to impose different regulation depending on the context, depending on the user. So probably you know the terms like ML and KYC. So those are the hurdles that everyone has to jump through when signing up to different crypto exchanges. So for us, it's our job is to convince regulators that what we are doing is actually kind of a bit different than investment use case. It's actually about enabling access to the crypto products that are not necessarily the investment. Sometimes they are, but sometimes they aren't. Like NFT games, cases like NFT games, or I don't know, saving products. So that's like one layer. And another one is obviously tech and the challenges that are coming from working on bleeding edge. So right now, this conversation is the context of different scalability solutions, and there are some different options like ZK syncs, optimistic rollups, etc. But fortunately for us, we can be protocol agnostic and just focus on the protocol that is that's used the most. But still, working with new technology, there are always coming challenges. How do you connect to all those systems, and also how you explain intricacies of those systems to the regulator or the payment partner that you're working with.
Thank you, Przemek. Illia, I'm going to turn the gun towards you. The beer bottle is turned towards you now. So, now that you heard one end of the spectrum, and I consider you at the other end of the more technical spectrum, and Henri somewhere in the middle, sat between the two, doing both things in one sense of speaking. So I'm going to ask your opinion as somebody who has been involved in scaling, who's been mostly in the so-called sharding space. What are the key things that you are observing in the ecosystem that has the highest hopes of actually giving humanity, the larger humanity, if you were to look at the total number of the wallets that are out there that's active, it's like a, order of magnitude 10 to the power 4, 10 to the power 5 in that sense, like 1 in 10 to the power 5 of all the people. So please go ahead and explain to all the audience, what your views are and what you have learned from actually working in this space.
Yeah, for sure. So kind of starting from more high-level question is well, what are we using blockchains and kind of more widely distributed technologies for, right? And the blockchain kind of core functionality, right, is tracking ownership and being able to program how people are kind of interacting with that. right? That's kind of the core piece. And then around that, we build kind of the whole Web3 stack, right? Where, we have like message passing, that's what Henri's working on. We have kind of also like layers of like interacting with the real world through, through RAMs, through Chainlink, oracles, all those things. And so kind of we use like the blockchain itself as this source of truth, right? And kind of settle on. Now, that kind of means that everybody in the world at any time should agree on the state, right? And this is a really hard problem, like technologically, because like this is not something that anybody else, including actually like, company, like I worked at Google before, or some of our engineers worked at Facebook, they don't have this problem, right? Nobody cares that everybody agrees that you pasted this message, posted this message or something. Like that's not a problem that anybody has. And so that's where actually like when we were starting, for example, we came with very different assumptions, and we're not recognizing some of the like pretty big problems that like scaling blockchains actually have. Now, from my perspective, I think like the whole space kind of is settling on a pretty much the same approach with few like kind of subtle differences. And so the subtle differences kind of make the, and we have names for all of them, right? So like the same approach is like, I mean, you want to process things in parallel, and then you will want to in some way cross-validate pretty much that whoever processed the other things in whatever other shards, rollups, chains, whatever it is correct. That's pretty much the whole thing, right? Like, how do we make sure that everybody agrees? Is but like and scale is we process things in parallel, and then somebody somewhere validates that that stuff is correct. Now, and so you have kind of a spectrum, right? One side of the spectrum is, well, nobody's processing anything in parallel. Everybody validates everything, and that's your Ethereum's and, for example, Solana, right? They just kind of, Solana is trying to scale through just running bigger machines. Now, on the opposite side of the spectrum, you have Cosmos approach. And so this approach is like, I just run a ton of independent chains, and then whoever needs to validate can validate it themselves, right? So you pretty much push it almost like to the user side versus kind of doing it on a protocol level. And so in the middle, you have so-called scaling solutions. And so this is rollups, sharding, and like heterogeneous sharding, like what Polkadot is doing. And so they all kind of delivers the same idea, which is, again, some things run in parallel. So for example, shard chains, or in our case, actually parts of the block run in parallel. And then the other validators cross-validate that indeed this is a correct like block or correct shard. Rollups are exactly the same. Like somebody runs, the part of the rollup kind of in parallel, and then the main chain validates that it's correct, either by waiting or using a ZK to prove kind of in time. And so, this all like, this is where, like there's a lot of argument about what's correct, but actually, like from my perspective, these approaches are all pretty similar. What's different is actually how you're going to handle communication across this shards, rollups, whatever it is. And that's where the interesting part comes in, because the whole point of blockchain, right? If you want to have this consensus, if you want these applications to run, you want them to be communicating as tightly as possible, right? Like, one of the big values of Ethereum has been this atomic composability that allows applications to call each other, and if something happens, fails the whole transaction, and you cannot achieve that in kind of this parallel environment. And so kind of that's, there's a lot of these options, like, Near launched, like few other protocol launched, and so we are there with few of these options. We'll see how they evolve. Like, I believe like Near stands, kind of stands for iteration in a way, right? We always near. And so like from my perspective, we're never finished, right? We're gonna continue evolving the protocol as we see, like, and as the community sees pretty much that things, some things working better than others. So we'll see how this will evolve.
As the ecosystem evolves.
Yeah, how the ecosystem evolves. What is the best? Maybe zero knowledge proofs, are replaced. Like, if zero knowledge proofs become like 100 times more efficient, we should switch like a bunch of stuff to them, right, and things like that. Now, but this goes into like, well, we actually have now infrastructure to with reasonable scale, like it's not perfect, but it's there. And now the question is like, okay, how do we get the users? How do we get the applications to be running on this? And so that's definitely interested, like discuss more how we gonna get there with already kind of having a base of the scalable infrastructure.
Yeah. So you said a lot about the complexity of this whole ecosystem, and I think what's important is to always remember about the user experience in this context, because user needs to understand what he or she is doing. And if we, I don't know, offer different options, then always the default option is to just ignore the selection. And I mean, this is something what user wants. They want to have a good solution that is chosen for them, to not think too much about the technical intricacies. And I think that's something what we should think about when designing different products. And from my experience working with different Web3 products, I see different approaches by different companies. So some companies prefer to focus on the security side of things and choose those solutions that offer the base security, the best security for the users. And some prefer to focus on scale and accessibility. And I think that's like very interesting. And I think the current wallet providers are not yet there in terms of supporting different options and actually enabling user to use applications.
Thank you, Przemek. I was about to turn this table around and focus a bit on data and drag Henri into this quagmire. Henri, what are your takes? Like, if you think about anything about the data, you could think of blockchain. It literally is a data structure in one sense of speaking. It's just doing a state update. And what Illia was mostly talking about is getting consensus. Exactly. And one of the things he kind of mentioned, Google doesn't care, but that's not actually true. If they look at Spanner, they do care about consensus. You actually, the value of consensus is
with exception to Spanner. To be clear, with exception to Spanner, Big Table, all the other things don't care. Spanner is magic. Spanner is pure magic.
Like, I know. That's why exactly I said, right? Like, I am one of the idiots who actually worked on cloud and big data a long while ago, wrote a lot of the standards. So I know exactly how each of these things work. So, every time I say something, I have caveats to it. So, Henri, now is your turn. Share the views. You don't have any particular views of things. So, you can actually go the way you want and explain your view from not being a layer 2, not being a new layer 1.
Yeah. I mean, I think the question of scaling in general becomes like in two dimensions. There's the technical scalability, and then there's the kind of adoption scale. And from the technical point of view, for us, like the Streamr network is not trying to do the hard thing of forming consensus, right? Which Illia mentioned. We're not trying to form consensus in the Streamr network. We're not trying to prevent double spending. We're in fact not doing like value transfers on the Streamr network at all. But it doesn't mean that scaling is trivial. It just means a slightly different thing, which is probably much easier to solve than the scaling of blockchain networks, which do need to maintain consensus. So how it kind of manifests itself from our point of view is like how many nodes there can be in the network, how quickly can we get a piece of information to everyone listening to a specific stream or topic in the network. So we're measuring things like throughput and latency and these kind of things that are kind of like the protocol itself. They are one layer below the application. And so these are the kind of research problems that we're trying to uncover, and the trade-offs that we are kind of thinking about in the space of data transport, right? But on the other hand, if we go to the adoption side of things, I think the problems across the different layers in blockchain space are very similar, actually. Like everyone's looking for a product market fit, right? Like what industry, like what user will benefit the most from this and this and this technology, right? Regardless of layer, right? And from our point of view, we've had like, and I'd be really interested in hear your experiences on this as well. But we've kind of had like two tracks on adoption. We'd have like enterprise adoption track, where we try to seek use cases from that field. You know, big established companies looking into new technologies that they could leverage. In our case, to, for example, crowdsource data or tap into data economies that are a kind of emerging thing, and everyone's interested in, you know, how to monetize the data and these kind of things. But on the other hand, these enterprises are kind of slow moving. They don't take big risks. They kind of see what's happening and then they follow. You know, going through a pilot cycle with them could take 12 months. But examples from this space is, for example, smart traffic and connected cars, right? So we've done pilots where there's like a Streamr node in a car, or a Streamr client in a car, and it sends the kind of telemetrics coming from the car into the network, and nearby other vehicles, as well as, let's say, like traffic monitoring centers and this kind of parties can then kind of ingest that data and make decisions to detect things like you know, accidents or dangerous conditions or this kind of things. So big example of like exactly the enterprise kind of use case. But then on the other hand, we have the, you know, the crypto native stuff, right? Where there's this self-feeding cycle where crypto people invent more crypto things to build on top of other crypto things, right? So kind of grassroots level builders and teams finding new kind of use cases. And this has been, I think, the most innovative and most fruitful space in the past 12 months. We've seen the crypto space invent things like DeFi, holy crap, like the space invented its own like financial structures, right? That completely replace certain elements in the traditional world. So this kind of innovation is super interesting, and I think you know, it has a lot of promise for each project to grow in this space. But eventually, we have to break out of the crypto bubble, right, and try to make that leap onto the, I call it kind of crypto island and mainland, where the enterprises and everybody else is. So we need to cross the bridge somehow, and crossing this bridge has turned out to be fairly difficult, at least from our point of view, and I think you might also agree on some of those points, but would be nice to hear others' experiences.
Yeah. So, for example, like exactly regarding the product market fit and seeing the adoption in the more retail space. So we work with a lot of products like NFT games. So that would be a crypto collectible that you can own and play with it. For example, product like Fantasy Football, so rare. Like this is like completely amazing product. They just issued football collectible cards, and you can play with it and own it and trade it. And we see a huge uptick in retail use. The numbers are growing every day, and the same goes for, I don't know, Axie Infinity. This is like another partner, and they also created a crypto game that is actually used by the crypto newbies. And I'm myself am amazed, because sometimes we speak with end users and see from what background they're coming. And for example, we are seeing retail customers from South America or Southern Eastern Asia that are playing those games against the people in Western countries. And I think here also crypto is like this great equalizer, because you have this layer that is available everywhere. And like I think that also is the like challenge for us, because in those countries, some of those countries, the payment systems are not that evolved like in Western countries, and to scale the access, we have to work locally, and that's like a very hard thing.
So we actually like.
Can I ask you something? I'm going to.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of on that topic.
Go ahead,
of,
Illia.
like,
You wanted to say something.
Getting people onboarded. Yeah, I think from my perspective, actually, like, I mean, onboarding is one of the most important problem you have in the space, because like one way or another, like kind of this crypto applications require money, right? Like that's and like this is pretty different from Web 2, where you kind of start using stuff and maybe pay later, or a lot of applications you don't even pay. And like kind of my belief in this, and we see this actually already playing out, is that we need a lot more places where people can start earning from zero. So they can come in without any crypto, without even knowing what crypto is, and start earning through doing work in crypto world, right? And some of the games you mentioned, actually, they provide that as an option. And like there's even communities that actually like generate, like onboard people, give them initial loan, get them to play. We actually have seen one of the use cases that we actually, why we got into blockchain, me with my co-founder, have been implemented on Near for crowdsourcing. So it's similar to Mechanical Turk, called Near Crowd. And so it allows people to pretty much crowdsource data for machine learning problems. And we see the adoption being pretty high, because this is pretty much a pretty good salary for many people, like working like few hours a day. And they are able to pretty much generate income, and they don't need to know anything about blockchain. Like, you know, kind of we've designed the workflows around the wallet, around all those things, to pretty much go from zero, start earning, and then you have Near, and then you can, you know, participate in the economy. You can, you know, use DeFi. You can now use all the subsequent things. And same, we see that for creators, right? Because like a lot of artists coming in, like on Ethereum, like and pretty much on other platforms as well, like you still need to have some tokens to start paying for fees to start creating things that you will be earning money from, right? So just removing that boundary pretty much kind of unlocks this new potentiality of people just starting to earn from zero and be able to kind of come into this platform pretty much cold start.
I agree with that point.
So apologies again.
If you want to take
you mind
over,
if I just
Anish,
add something and then give it back to you?
Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to add something. I just wanted to add an observation. I think both Przemek and Illia were kind of pointing at one thing. In general, when adoptions happen, there is this, parts of the world where there are technology adopted, got to a degree that the delta, the gain is limited. So what I mean by that is, imagine telephones. So if you had an adoption or a switch from a plain old telephone line to mobile phones, the gain that you have in the switch is much, much higher. So kind of what I was kind of seeing in both Illia and Przemek was kind of saying is like parts of the world where, there is no such thing as a real payment infrastructure, mobile things of that sort. Adoption could be bootstrapped if we allow them, get onboarded, be creating revenue by themselves, and then getting started. Henri, back to you. Apologies for interrupting.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. This is definitely the way to reach masses in the short term, to create opportunities for them to earn, because incentives are the way to get people on board, right? It's the only way. People will do almost anything for money, unfortunately. So one interesting thing that came to mind from what Illia said, from that Mechanical Turk kind of thing that they had, is we have a kind of similar thing where large groups of people can contribute data into a kind of data product that then gets sold on a marketplace. And there's a pioneering implementation by a team called Swash that currently has like 50,000 people. So it's not yet like a massive data product, but on crypto scale, like show me an application that has 50,000 users on the blockchain, right? Or related to the blockchain. And there's not that many, right? There's not that many. So the scale is kind of different. And I think if we can get this technology one way or another to the hands of hundreds of thousands and millions of people, that will mean a very big paradigm change, and also like an attitude change with people, because suddenly it becomes kind of more familiar for people. I think plenty of people are kind of afraid of crypto a little bit because they don't know it. But suddenly, if they get in contact with it in whatever way, maybe they install an application that shares some data and they earn a little bit of money, and then they can see like, okay, how can I use this? Like, can I sell this, or how do I convert it to dollars or whatever? It all becomes kind of demystified, which I think is very important step in reaching that kind of mass adoption, right? And for projects like Streamr or Near, our users are developers, right? So they are the ones who adopt the technology. But for Ramp, the users are end users, basically. So it's I feel it's especially hard to, as an infrastructure project, to reach all the way to the end users, because it requires something in between. It requires the developers who innovate end user applications, and they need to be good, and the infrastructure needs to be good for the adoption to happen. And I think the overall space is starting to get there slowly, but it will probably take years for this change to happen. But early signs of it are definitely there.
So, Henri, I was about to add something to what you just said, and I wanted to bring back Przemek in and ask him a question. So, the way I describe it is like when the cars were probably first evolved, there's this question about 3 pedals, actually more than 3 pedals, and it wasn't even a pedal. If Henry Ford's car brake was brake thing was a handle, right? Mm-hmm. So the concept that if you press the brake pedal, it'll brake, in spite of the anti-braking system, all the electronics that's there, all the hydraulics that goes in, I think we need to get to that level where people have a level of trust and comfort in the code and the infrastructure that they go, because people, when they get into the car, they're trusting the car with their life to the largest degree possible. I think we have to create that kind of abstraction of technology away from the user, that the user comes in and goes, I trust this shit. I don't know how it does it, but I think it does. Right?
Yeah.
So I have a question for you, Przemek. Sorry, go ahead, Henri.
No, it's a good analogy. It's just that people's expectations, even about cars, I think, have changed. So I don't know, people like the space is competing against Web 2, right? And Web 2 is awesome in terms of usability. It's just not awesome in terms of how the power is distributed in this space. So I'm kind of worried that, referring to your car example, like having that confidence that the brake pedal will not, will brake is not enough. It's more like we need the self-driving car for it to be interesting for the Web 2, like not the Henry Ford car, right? But
that's a significant challenge, right? Like we are edging the problem of ethics of AI when you go into that, and essentially the question about the trolley problem comes in. Essentially, when the self-driving car is going, the car has an occupant inside and a trolley that's crossing. All those problems, let's park that sideways, because we completely have this huge challenge of Web 2 versus Web 3. And I was actually planning to drag in Przemek and kind of ask him about this regulatory challenge, which is essentially, the world could be thought of 2 ways. It's like, there's some innovations happening, there's an innovation arbitrage, and there's a regulatory framework. And the regulatory framework tries to create a fairer ground. And if you think about the car and autonomous car, they say part of the reason why we don't have a level 5 autonomous car is because of the regulation. So, Przemek, now, give us your take on your view of the regulation. How do you perceive the KYC ML regulations? How do you perceive the latest set of regulations that's coming out from the US? Travelers rule and things of that sort.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And just to go back a bit to this question about the autonomous driving cars, the regulations there are like the goal of the regulation is to save people, and there's like at this moment in the development where the benefits of allowing cars AI-driven cars is going to be better, higher than the just keeping it disallowed. And I think that for crypto, like we see regulations as something what we just have to accept and just deal with it, because like the fintech, like because we are in this weird position where we are both a crypto product and also a fintech product. So when you're building a fintech product, then you are actually building on layers and layers of different products, and all of those parts have to be regulated. And so everyone who is closer and closer to the traditional financial system has to comply with the regulations, and they also require everyone hired to comply with those regulations. So I think in that for us there is no going around it. So we have to just work with the so we have to focus more not on, I don't know, sidestepping the regulations or avoiding them. We have to accept and talk to regulators and explain them what they are doing and why they should let the innovative minds to run free to some extent, and just try to build and let them build new products that can be used and revolutionize how we interact with money and internet. We'll see how it goes. And like I
think we have like a couple of minutes.
Yeah. Sorry. No, go ahead.
Go ahead. If you finish your thought, finish your thought.
No, I just wanted to say that, so the regulations are getting harder, and I actually think that we'll see the regulation coming up in every country. So, for example, like I'm from Poland, and Poland is also implementing something new. In UK, there are new regulations regarding crypto. In US also, so you will see regulations everywhere. And the goal of solutions
it's
like
a regulatory
ours,
arbitrage is going to be hunt down.
And the goal of the product like ours is to just handle all of those complexity and create just safe and regulatory friendly door for everyone to enter the crypto market and crypto ecosystem. So others products like yours don't have to handle the complexity and the problem with it.
But do you think that I actually have a question here? Do you think regulators are attacking kind of the wrong place? Like, in a way, they're trying to regulate the entrance, which is really not where where the all the activity that is malicious will be happening at the end. Like maybe right now this is where it is, right? Like in next few years. But like if we're talking about, I mean, what Anish is working on, what many other folks in the industry are working on around privacy, around kind of payment channels, around all those things. Like if we're thinking about the future in crypto, kind of like handling payments, yeah.
I mean, depending on the goals, and like we'd have to specify, but we don't have time to specify the exact
mindful
case.
Of time. Okay, we just have like 2 minutes left.
Yeah,
I would like to give you all like 30 seconds each before we finish.
I just wanted to say that like I think this efficient solution to regulate the entrance and exit, because they cannot monitor and sometimes even comprehend some of the products that are happening and working on the crypto side. So they just focus on what they know and what they can regulate. So that's the exit and the entrance and the exit. Okay, so we can.
Henri, you have a few seconds, I guess, minutes. So your observations.
Yeah. So if I try to summarize, talked about tech, we've talked about product market fit, talked about regulation, and recognized how each area is making pretty fast progress, actually. Like from our point of view, it's not really the crypto regulation that's the most relevant. It's actually the data regulation and GDPR and California Privacy Act and this kind of things. But there's very good advancement in each of these fields. And I'm super confident that we're kind of on the right track towards the Web3 scalability, which is the goal of everyone here in this panel. So happy to hang out with you guys, exchange thoughts, and good luck. Hopefully we meet in person in the next event. That's everything
Illia,
from me.
You have a few more seconds left. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, thanks everyone. Yeah, it was a good conversation. I think in general, for sure, the technology is there now. I mean, there's a lot of more work on technology side, but it's kind of more like additive work. It's not transformational work at this point. And so now, yeah, we really need developers, right, to be like building awesome, really easy to use applications that, you know, onboard new people, that allows them to earn money, that create incentives around bringing in kind of big network effects, right? Social networks, new ways of organizing people, new ways of earning, like kind of just pretty much not just, I mean, and yes, connecting to the kind of existing enterprises, connecting to existing kind of networks as well to really kind of scale out. So I'm excited for coming year pretty much with all those things happening. So like we already see this is happening like slowly, but like we'll see more of this.
Yeah, and it's our job to make it easier for them to make those killer applications.
Yes.
So let's do it.
Yes.
Thank you all very much. It is a pleasure having you all. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Henri. Thank you, Przemek. I think we are going to be done now.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks.
Cheers, Anish. I love that panel, so laid back, friendly, and relaxed. Really exemplar of builders in our space. And I totally agree with Anish's metaphor comparing the infrastructure level to a car, that we need to abstract the technology away to the level of a brake pedal, or even as Henri then said, to the level of a self-driving car, and then we can reach mass adoption. And then Przemek added the question around regulations role on top of that. Just great job, everyone. And thank you again, Anish, Henri, Przemek, and Illia. Up next, we'll have Sasha Hudzilin, co-creator of Human Guild, explaining how community-owned gig worker platforms can partially alleviate poverty while teaching people valuable skills in the process. This is the Open Web Forum at CogX, curated by Fabric Ventures, and we'll see you back here in 18 minutes.